now local atheism?
I don't know. I haven't watched any atheist video at all. I haven't
Okay,
followed any
okay,
atheist, but
right. Okay, that's fine. I accept that. But you probably have spoken with other atheists and you picked up some of their ideas. Okay, local. If I have spoken to many atheists over the last 10 or 12 years, most of which are not professionals, but I have dialogue with some professional atheists, and it's a very common response when I say, "How is it that there is no God?" And they say, "Well, which God are we talking about?" Well, this is a bait and switch. Rather than talking about God, what if I was talking about ice cream? And I said to you, and you took the position there is no ice cream, right?
Mhm.
And I said to you, how is it that ice cream does not exist? And you respond to me by saying, well, which flavor are we talking about?
Yeah.
Now, do you see how improper that response is?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
like, yeah.
So when
Now,
somebody takes the position there is no God, and somebody says, how do you sustain that position? How do you account that there is no God? And they say, well, which God are we talking about? That's the same thing as saying, well, which flavor of ice cream?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, you are very smart. I mean, I actually say you, I have never had a conversation with such a smart like you. I mean,
Yeah.
like, what I can say is,
Look, the
I
human
mean, yeah.
mind, we are creatures of habit, okay, mentally and physically. Now, and we also have certain motivations that are not always on the surface. And there's a phenomenon in science and in history and in philosophy and politics called confirmation bias. That if we have a deeply seated a commitment to something, we will tend to gravitate toward ideas, okay, that support that idea, and we will ignore ideas that refute our commitment. And my conviction is that atheists are guilty of confirmation bias. Now, they'll turn around and they'll say, well, the God believers are guilty of confirmation bias. Okay, so be it. The bottom line here is this: that I mean, there are many ways that I can defeat atheism, but one of the simplest ways of doing it is to point out that atheism is a universal negative. Okay, there is no God. In other words, all the things that can and do exist without derivation and dependence from God. Okay, that's a statement of universality. Now, in a world where it was not governed and controlled by a supreme being and a creator, how would any statement of universality be supported? You're not omniscient, so how would you defend any universal statement? The answer is you couldn't. You couldn't. Unless you were in a world where what is ultimate is a mind, is an agent that has the attributes that will enable you to come to know that some things or something is universal. So only in a world where God exists and exists with a particular character set can we come to know by his permission certain things that are universal. But if you reject the notion that God does not exist, but then you go ahead and you make a statement of universality, on what basis can you know or ground such universal statements? You certainly can't do it by experience, right?
Yeah.
So, how does atheism, being a universal declaration, how does it support the universal declaration other than by cliches? The answer is it can't.
I mean, what I do think is that, like, what I do think is that I'll try to speak slowly. Like, science is trying to find the answer of so many questions, um, but like, for example, we know the evolution of Darwin's theory. uh, can convince, like previously before Darwin's theory, it was really hard for us to believe that, like for example, the complexity of human being was so complex.
Okay.
It was really hard to see that.
Do you think that Darwin discovered something?
I think he make it simple for us.
No, I'm asking you a question. Did Darwin discover something?
Yeah, he discovered great things.
No, he did not. Darwin came up with a new slant on a previously held idea called transmutation. The ancient Greeks, some of them believed in transmutation or evolution. Darwin was raised in a nominally religious home, and he also believed nominally in the biblical account of creation. By the time he got back from his trip on the ship, the Beagle, he had rejected his belief that the Bible was in any sense to be accepted as a historical narrative. So Darwin rejected the idea of special creation, right? He then sought to try to explain complex biological life through some mechanism, okay? Now, Darwin became famous and was popularized because he wrote a book called The Origin of the Species, which claimed that natural selection was the mechanism through which evolution worked. Okay? Now,
yeah.
Darwin didn't come up with that idea. He stole it from Alfred Russel Wallace. Okay? Now, natural selection is a part of the theory of evolution, but it is not the sum total of evolution. Natural selection only explains the survival of the fittest, not the arrival of the fittest. Okay? So what happened was Darwin wrote The Origin of the Species in 1859, and it quickly sold out, and it became very popular, and through the 20th century, it became entrenched within the scientific community, academia, and the entertainment industry, as well as in many political situations around the world. Okay? Now, once a belief becomes entrenched, widespread, and there is a large degree of consensus, people consider it a fact that is beyond question, right? So an example of this would be the pre-Copernican view that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that all of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the planets, which they included as stars, but not as we conceive them now, all orbited going around the Earth. Okay? This was widespread throughout the world, right? It was considered to be the best explanation with the best predictive capability. But the more telescopes when telescopes came along the scene, it provided for a greater degree of accuracy in observation. And then, due to the mathematical analysis of Copernicus, he realized that the explanation that the Earth was the center of everything didn't square with these observations through the telescope and the mathematical calculations. So he came up with a better explanation. So to this day, you and I and everyone else are holding to a Copernican view of the universe. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's wrong. I accept the Copernican view. But what you have is you have a major change in how things are seen. Now, people didn't change overnight. It took quite a while before people to die out and people to become acquainted. Now, evolution, the only thing it really has going for it is that it's widespread and that most scientists that you might encounter tend to believe in it. But when you actually get into the nitty-gritty of the theory of evolution, this is where huge problems come. So here's one example. The fossil record, when we look at it as a whole, does not support transition. it demonstrates stasis. And this is widely recognized by some of the world's top paleontologists. Okay? So the point is this. The theory of evolution doesn't logically and necessarily get you to know God, but what it does do, it provides you with a way of explaining the origin of biological life and to dismiss the need of God as the creator of life. And once you dismiss the need for God as the creator of complex biological life, from that, it's another step to say, well, I'm in no need of God, therefore there's no God. But believing in evolution doesn't follow that there's no God. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you are very smart, and I think you have done so many research on it. But can you like even in the formation of cell, yeah, when there comes.
Would you like me now to tell you why you should believe in God?
I mean, no, like
you know why you should? I'll tell you why. The reason why you should believe in God, okay, the reason why you and I and everyone else should and do believe in God is because God has taken the initiative in creation to reveal himself through every fact of life. Now, you're going to reject that when I say that. So I can make a defense of that, and I can give you a defense of that claim such that it is impossible for you to deny. So here's how it works. Since there are facts, and facts possess identity, something is what it is, right? A dog is a dog, the moon is the moon, right? If something possesses identity, right, then it either possesses identity in and of itself, being absolute, or something else is fundamentally absolute that provides for the identity of the dog and the moon. Okay? So if there are facts, if there are entities that possess identity, then identity can only exist if and only if the thing that possesses identity is either absolute in itself or that it derives from something that is absolute. If somebody denies this, then you cannot invoke identity for objects and put entities on the table. So something must be absolute in and of itself that in some way and in some sense imposes that things possess identity, and we could add identity over time. Now, many people just think, well, a dog is a dog, the moon is a moon. I say, okay, fine. But is the moon unconditionally non-dependent and non-derivative? Has the moon always existed? Because if the moon has not always existed, then its actuality and its identity is imposed by something that is not itself.
Hello. Hello.
So the fact that individual things exist, they are indicative, they are revelatory of that which is absolute. But they could only be indicative and revelatory of the absolute if and only if the absolute was a mind, an agent, that had the attribute set by which it could make things indicated. So either you will accept that, and if you don't accept that, then you're going to be in a position where you cannot defend that anything has identity.
Okay, bye.
Because if you say, oh, things possess identity without needing God, because one will say, I don't see the need that these things indicate or reveal God by his purpose. They say, fine, then explain to me how identity for objects is real. If something is real, and we have a mental acquisition of that, a mental appropriation of it, what makes it possessing identity real? Is it real in and of itself? or is its realness the product of something else that is absolute? And in a world where somebody wants to offer that there is an absolute that provides for all identity, but that it's not God, I say, fine. Now tell me, how do you put that on the table? How do you put on the table that there's something that's absolute, that provides for all things that are not absolute, that have identity? How do you have a non-agent, a non-mind, engage in revelation or a sender-receiver relationship? How does that work? And the answer is, it can't. And you know what ends up happening? When I'm on Clubhouse on a regular basis, I get atheists, I'm not suggesting this of you, but I get atheists lying through their teeth because they don't want to admit the devastating line of reasoning that I have just presented.
Yeah. I mean, it's very complicated for me because English is my secondary language. But I think you have.
Your English is good. Your English is very good. The point is that the point is this, right? There are positive and negative reasons why you should believe in God. First and foremost, is because God made you to believe in Him. Now, at this point, you'll say, well, if God made me to believe in God, why do I deny God exists? Well, because human beings have the capacity to fool themselves, to rationalize away from something that they formally accepted or believed. Okay, it's called the suppression of the truth in unrighteousness. Now, there are two kinds of unbelief. There's resistant non-belief, and then there's non-resistant non-belief. Atheists will claim that they are practitioners of non-resistant unbelief. But we can show that that's not true because every one of their lines of reasoning why there is no God simply doesn't hold up upon examination. Okay?
Yeah.
So getting back to why you should believe in God is that there's the positive reason because things possess identity, and if you accept that things possess identity, then they will have to have identity in virtue of themselves or something that else is absolute. But they can only be indicative of, identity can only be real, okay? If we agree that things possess identity, they can only possess identity that it's real if something is absolute, right? So somebody might say, well, there's got to be an absolute there, but it doesn't have to be God because things possess identity. They say, but how do you go from these things indicate there's an absolute? Where's the sender-receiver relationship? There isn't one. Okay?
Yeah.
So we have the case that I've given for you is a philosophical representation of the first chapter of the book of Romans in the New Testament that goes, ever since the beginning of the creation of the world, God's eternal powers have been clearly seen through everything that has been made so that men are without a defense. And they turned and they worshipped creation. Okay? Do you know what worshiping the creation is? Worshiping the creation rather than the creator is as simple as this. Hey, I don't accept I'm in the God world. I am in the not God world. That's worshiping the creation. Okay? Now, I've made a positive case for why you should believe in God. Now I'm going to give you a negative reason why you should believe in God. It is impossible to hold to the denial of God and hold to it in a defensible way. It is impossible to invoke the non-existence of God and provide for its defense in a logically necessary way. That is why most people who hold to atheism do so under probabilistic considerations. They'll say, well, God probably doesn't exist. Okay? But you see, in the case that God is or is not, either way, God's existence or non-existence would be necessary. It wouldn't be contingent. God's existence or non-existence would not be probabilistic. You see, we use probabilistic reasoning because we're not omniscient about certain factors, because we're trying to come up with a good guess that there are certain things that are random. Well, God's existence or non-existence is not subject to contingency or randomness. So saying God probably exists or probably doesn't exist is foolish. And there's some very smart people who offer that line of reasoning. Now, here's another thing is this. If you don't believe that God is, and that he has revealed himself through creation and ultimately through the person of Jesus Christ, because only the God of the Bible has the attribute set which we could call a state of perfection, without which we couldn't be secure to know that God exists. But if you deny that, if you deny God's existence, then the consequence of that is then you won't be able to deny anything. Because if you do deny something, I'm going to say, good. What is it that is ultimate, that dictates all states of affairs, that would make any proposition off limits? Like if I told you, yesterday afternoon I jumped to the moon in America, I just jumped to the moon, I ate lunch, and I came back. You would say, no, I don't accept that. I say, well, why don't you accept that? And you say, well, because there are certain state of affairs that would render that not possible. So you're holding to something that is static that would prohibit me from jumping to the moon. But what makes that real? Okay?
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in God, that everything in this world is the product of his mind, his purpose, and his redemptive plan through Jesus Christ, if you don't believe that, then you won't have a reason to believe in anything, and you won't have a reason to negate anything either. Okay? Now, some people say, well, I'm a skeptic. I doubt that God exists. And I would respond by saying, if you don't believe God exists, then you can't doubt anything. Because if you tell me you can, I'm going to tell me on what ultimate basis do you doubt anything.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So doubt is only possible if we are in a world where God is a perfect being, and we are within his plan of creation and redemption, and I will add through Jesus Christ. But if you reject that, and God is not the basis upon which all doubt will be measured, then what is your basis to doubt anything? And most commonly what people say, well, the laws of nature. Okay. Are the laws of nature what dictate everything? And if you say yes, I'm going to say, where'd you get that from? Okay. Are the laws of nature eternal, without beginning? Are they non-derivative? Are they unconditionally non-dependent? I spoke with an atheist physicist who has some international notoriety. His name is Lawrence Krauss. He wrote a book called A Universe from Nothing. He's a staunch atheist. And he says, we don't need God. We can explain everything through the laws of nature. Well, when it was my turn to speak with him, I asked him, Dr. Krauss, what is it that exists at a fundamental level that dictates all state of affairs as to what is, can be, and cannot be? And his answer is, well, I don't know. And he got very angry because I called his bluff. Because if one doesn't know what fundamentally dictates what is, can be, and cannot be, then how can you say you don't need God? Okay? So atheism thrives at its root on motivated reasoning, because individuals don't want there to be a God, because we don't want to surrender to God and acknowledge him as our creator. So atheists, through a process of confirmation bias, collect all sorts of cliched thinking as to why it's logical that you don't believe in God. But when we go through them step by step, they don't hold up. Okay?
Yes.
So I've given you both positive reasons to believe in God, and I've given you positive reasons to reject atheism.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm not just arguing for a generic God. I'm saying that the only true God is going to have to be a perfect God, a God that has all great-making properties. And there's only one God through the annals of history, and even today, that meets that bill, and that is the God of the Bible through Jesus Christ. And we're going to have to decide in this very short existence that we have in this life whether we are going to bow the knee to correctly and logically surrender to Jesus Christ as the second person of the Trinity, receive forgiveness of sins, and we will, as a benefit of that, receive blessing, love, and joy for all of eternity. But if we reject that, God will give us what we want, and that will be separation from Him. Now, if somebody hearing me says, "Oh, that's a bunch of bunk," say, "Good. The only way that you can say that is bunk is that you're going to have to tell me then what is your model of reality? How do you ground it, and how do you use it as a defeater for the Christian worldview?" Because my argument is this, is that the fundamental characteristics, the fundamental attributes of the Christian worldview as detailed in the Bible are indispensable for actuality and intelligibility in human existence. Not that, for example, that let's say my doctor might be an atheist, right? And he says, "Well, I don't believe in God, but I can fix your broken leg, and I don't believe in God." So yeah, that's right. I agree with you. But you see, the problem with you, doctor, when you're fixing my broken leg, is fixing my broken leg would be meaningless in a God-free world because there would be nothing identifiable that dictates that regularities are real. Okay? Saying that you have predictive capability, right? People say, "Well, we have science, we put men on the moon." Okay, yeah, so what? That doesn't mean that there are laws of nature. Because many scientists are instrumentalists. They don't care whether these theories are true or not. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I think today I learned so many things. I'll follow you. I really wanted to know about so many religions, and I think you have teach me so many things today, and I'll also be listening to you in future also. Yeah, yeah.
So here's the thing about Jesus Christ's identity claims. They're such that if we have a clear understanding of his identity claims and how they apply to a worldview, they are such that they cannot be denied without the consequence of one's worldview turning to absurdity, that there's nothing dictating fundamentally why anything is. See, this is the genius of the God of the Bible, that his identity claims in the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, and specifically the self-identity claims of Jesus Christ, they are such that if you do not accept them, it is catastrophic for you philosophically. You then will have no final or ultimate frame of reference as to why anything is. Okay?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, yeah, I have some question about some question like previously, some religions they used to believe that Earth used as you mentioned, sun used to rotate Earth, but later they find that no, Earth used to rotate the sun, and then they changed their holy scripture. If it was true written by God or its followers, then why should it should be changed?
I'm not quite sure if I'm understanding you, and if I'm not, let me know. We may think certain stories from other religious traditions are silly, absurd, or false. But we can only do so because it's at odds with our belief system right now. So what demonstrates our belief system to use that against other religious traditions? Like, for example, I don't believe the claims of Muhammad. I don't believe these other stories from other religions. And the reason why is because I hold to the Christian worldview. And it's a system. It's a package. Right? Now, when we believe in another worldview, in whole or in part, it's by virtue of the entire package, not just piecemeal. Okay? The reason why you should believe in the self-identity claims of Jesus Christ and his death, burial, and resurrection, okay, is not simply and merely because we have certain eyewitness testimony, okay, although that's a part of it, is when we look at the package, okay, the Bible as a whole, that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is a part of God exemplifying in the course of human history that he is a perfect God, and being perfect, he's a loving God, and he's a redemptive God. And the denial of part of the package is a denial of the whole package. If you deny one part of the package, you have to deny the whole package. So if you don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, you will be rejecting the Christian worldview as a complete package. But if you reject the Christian worldview as a complete package, then what is the package that you are using to explain your world to make sense of it? If Jesus Christ, as the second person in the Trinity, is not Lord of all right now, and we're simply waiting for him to come again and to judge the living and the dead, then what is Lord? What does control everything? And if somebody just says physics, I'll say, good. Tell me how you arrived at that. Okay?
Yeah.
There are even scientists out there who say these theories of physics may not even be true. But as long as they seemingly give us utility, we're gonna use them. They're called instrumentalists. Okay? So you said earlier about that you only believe in things that you see. Well, that's not. Nobody lives that way. So for example, you cannot see that there is something. You cannot see with your eyes or your ears, or you feel with your fingertips. You cannot see that something is imposing the realness of continuity among things that are not don't have continuity. In other words, that things remain the same. Okay, is the fact that some things remain the same while other things change, is that just an illusion, or do some things remain the same while others change because there's something securing it? And if you believe that there's something securing that some things remain the same while allowing other things to change, well, you can't see that, can you? But you believe in it. So this idea of saying the only things that I believe in are the things that that I see, people don't follow that. Now, if you say, for some things that I'm going to believe in, I must see, well, that's reasonable. But if you say, for everything that I believe, I must see it with my eyes, well, nobody follows that. Nobody.
Yeah.
Okay? So the point is that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah, previously I was saying I believe that I can see and science can prove. I said these two things together.
Yeah, and by the way, people who hold to the Christian worldview, we are pro-science. But we have been criticized as saying we're anti-science because we don't believe, let's say, in Darwin's theory of evolution, or we don't believe that the universe is old. That doesn't mean we're anti-science. Because if you know anything about the history of science, there are wide belief systems that have come and gone. in the history of science. Okay? For example,
Yeah.
Big Bang cosmology is widely popularly believed, but it only came on the scene, probably less than 100 years ago. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
But here's another thing: is this?
Damn
If
nice.
you don't believe that God is and that He's perfect and that He's revealed Himself through the person of Jesus Christ, then what fundamentally is at the ground of all things that provides for science being plausible? Appealing to predictive success isn't going to work. Okay?
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Science only makes sense in a world where God is. Why? Because God is the absolute. God is the one who imposes and makes real the regularities of existence while allowing certain things that are irregular. Now, if somebody says, well, I have no need for that, I say, okay, fine. Then tell me what makes these regularities real. If they are real, what makes them real? We go, well, laws of nature. Well, that's begging the question. So you see, believing in God, and specifically the God of the Bible, is not being superstitious. There are actually excellent philosophical and logical reasons to not only believe in the God of the Bible, but that it is impossible to deny Him. Now, of course, people do publish books, and people, verbally deny, but there's a world of difference between writing books and verbally denying it and actually making a case for it. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I really want, I think I made with good person. I met with you. Like, you teach me so many things. Um, I really want to learn about all these things, and yeah, I mean, I wanted to know. I always wanted to, because of my language barrier, I was unable to
What
communicate
background?
so many people.
What background
Sorry,
did you say? You said your background?
my background is Hinduism.
Hinduism?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Hinduism is itself an incoherent worldview along with atheism. Okay?
yeah,
It doesn't hold up upon examination. You see, Satan wants you to believe in anything as long as it's not the truth. Okay? He doesn't care whether you believe in atheism or whether you believe in Hinduism, as long as you don't believe the truth.
mm, yeah. I mean, now I know so many things from like Hinduism because I was born in Hindu family. So, but I also want to know about other religions and science itself. So, but I'm learning English because I can read other holy books and other books. So I'm improving my English for this reason also, and for like
Uh, um, I'll give you a little piece of advice, okay? And this is not a criticism, okay? Learning other languages is not easy, but when you come from a Hindi background, okay, because of the nature of the way things are pronounced, it people like me who speak English who don't speak Hindi, that if you speak slower, it's easier to understand you because of the English speaker's limitations, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, for example, if you're speaking with another person who's, is fluent in Hindi or has an Indian kind of accent, and you speak at a normal rate that you do in English, they're better equipped to understand you even in English because you both have this common way of pronouncing things. But when you're dealing with someone like me, I'm not well accustomed to, a Hindi kind of accent when it comes to the use of English words. So when you speak a little bit slower, then it makes it a lot easier to understand you. You know, that's because of the problem on our side, not on your side.
Yeah, yeah. So many people they have also mentioned the same thing, and I try to improve, but I forget. And but yeah, I'm trying to like distill the correct pronunciation of every word, and I was also trying to like learn British accent. Like where are you from? But I forgot that.
Mhm.
Like in which country? Where are you from?
Okay,
Which country?
the United States.
United States. Okay.
Mhm.
Like.
Okay, okay. So do you understand
Uh, Hello there.
that
Can I
atheism? Yeah, atheism thrives on very poor reasoning, even among professionals. It doesn't hold up upon examination. Ask yourself this question: even if somebody has a PhD in philosophy, how are they going to ground a universal declaration? How? How are you going to do that?
Mm,
Okay. Does having a PhD in philosophy and being an atheist, does that enable you to make a universal declaration that there is no God? Okay? No.
mm,
Atheism is very poor wishful thinking. And you know what? The number of people who are atheists significantly grew over the last 150 years precisely because of Darwin's theory of evolution. Right?
yeah.
And like I said, not because evolution ipso facto gets you to there is no God, but when you believe in evolution, you feel like, well, I don't have a need for God for complex biology, therefore I don't need a God at all.
Mm,
Okay?
yeah.
You know, Darwin had somebody who defended his views. His name was T.H. Huxley. It was called Darwin's Pit Bull. And he also had very famous children and grandchildren, you know, in the philosophical landscape. And one of the grandchildren of T.H. Huxley was Julian Huxley. Julian Huxley said Darwin's greatest achievement was the removal of God from the sphere of rational discussion. Okay? Well, how did he do that? How did he do that when evolution doesn't logically and necessarily get you that there is no God? Well, the answer is it doesn't you by saying that if you don't need God in this area here, then you don't need God over there. Okay?
Mm, yeah.
So if you feel you're in no need of God as a biological creature, then you're in no need of God being a cosmic citizen.
Yeah.
Okay? But evolution, and by the way, evolution is not as evidential as people claim it is. Okay?
Yeah. I mean, about the evolution, what I feel is that like the formation of very very like unconvincing, but other things like I can believe, but
Well,
formation of
well,
cities.
well, certain theoretical constructs or explanations can be very persuasive until you hear an opposing view. Okay? And when it comes to evolution, the theory of evolution is dogma throughout much of the world.